The chapter opens with the arrival of a new student, Human Choi, a figure already infamous at his previous school. Known as a breeding ground for delinquents, Human carries with him a reputation drenched in violence. He isn't simply a transfer student, he is a predator entering a new hunting ground. From the very beginning, his presence is loud, obnoxious, and laced with arrogance. His sharp tongue and impulsive fists quickly establish him as someone who views others, especially the weak, as toys to be broken for his own amusement. He wastes no time returning to his old habits, roaming the hallways and classrooms like a predator scanning for vulnerable prey. He is not looking for a challenge, he is looking for someone defenseless. And that's when his gaze falls upon a quiet student, Si-yoon, Yeon. Human, Si-yoon, is the perfect target. Thin-framed, almost sickly in appearance, with soft features and long hair that slightly brushes his shoulders. His name, Si-yoon further, fuels Human's mockery. In his shallow mind, it's a name that sounds too feminine. Without knowing anything about Si-yoon, Human decides he will be his next victim. The class is unaware of the tension building. Si-yoon sits in silence, as always unnoticed, undisturbed. But Human's approach shatters that calm like a stone through glass. Without a word, Human comes up behind Si-yoon and suddenly wraps his arm tightly around Si-yoon's neck. It is not a warning, it is an ambush, a chokehold meant to demonstrate dominance, to show everyone watching that Si-yoon is nothing more than another weakling to be bullied in front of an audience. But something unexpected happens. Si-yoon does not freeze. He does not panic. He reacts with precision, born not from brute strength but from control and instinct. Si-yoon drives his elbow backward, landing a clean strike into Human's side. The impact forces Human to loosen his grip slightly. His expression, once confident and smug, turns to disbelief and anger. He did not expect resistance, certainly not from someone who looked like Si-yoon. Human's anger flares, and he moves to attack again, but in the span of just a second, the roles reverse. Before Human can regain control, he realizes that his arms are no longer free. Si-yoon, in a fluid, unflinching movement, loops the straps of Human's own backpack around his wrists, binding them together. The crowd around them doesn't even have time to react. Now helpless, Human finds his head gripped firmly by Si-yoon's hand. In a moment that freezes the entire classroom, Si-yoon begins to slap Hyun, not wildly, but deliberately. One slap, then another, and another. Each strike lands with a loud crack, echoing through the silence of stunned students. The slaps aren't just physical blows, they are humiliation delivered with surgical precision. The classroom watches, in shock. Human Choi, the feared transfer student, is being beaten in broad daylight, restrained, exposed, powerless, and by someone everyone assumed was weak. That moment marks a turning point. It is the brutal debut of Si-yoon, not as a victim, but as someone to fear. Word spreads quickly. The incident becomes a wildfire of whispers and rumors. In nearby classrooms, students discuss what just happened with disbelief. The transfer student, once seen as a dangerous thug, has been taken down. And not by another fighter, but by a boy, who, up until today, had existed in complete anonymity. Curiosity soon takes over. Students, especially those known for fighting or stirring up trouble, make their way to Si-yoon's class. They want to see with their own eyes the student who defeated Human, and when they lay eyes on Si-yoon, they are perplexed. He doesn't look like a threat. His frame is small, almost frail. His long hair and calm demeanor only add to the confusion. He doesn't fit the image of a fighter, and yet, the evidence is undeniable. As the day comes to an end, Si-yoon walks home alone, carrying his bag with the same quiet, unaffected manner as always, but Human is not finished. Nursed by humiliation and fury, he waits for Si-yoon along the path home, joined by several of his friends, likely other delinquents or classmates who feel emboldened by numbers. They confront Si-yoon with accusations claiming that the way he won was unfair, that he cheated, that he fought dirty. Si-yoon listens. His expression remains cold, detached, and then, with calm but cutting honesty, he delivers a response that strips them of their argument. He points to his own body, a body that is all bone and skin, small in stature, a physical disadvantage in every possible way. And yet, despite this, they dare to accuse him of being unfair. Their logic collapses under the weight of that truth. In this moment, it becomes clear. Si-yoon is not someone to be measured by size or judged by appearance. He is someone who calculates, who thinks ahead, who strikes not for cruelty but for precision, and who will not tolerate being prey. This is not just a victory in a single confrontation. It is the beginning of a shift in the school's silent Hierarchy. Siyun Yan has arrived, not with loud threats or flamboyant displays, but with brutal, quiet strength, and those who once ruled by fear are now the ones who must look over their shoulders. Though the crowd had dispersed, and the whispers had scattered across the school like dust in the wind, the aftermath of humans' humiliation had only just begun. Siyun Yan might have walked away from that fight, but the shadows were still following him. As he finds himself face to face with Human again, things quickly escalate. But this time, Human isn't alone. Towering behind him are two more delinquents, thugs with twice the size and none of the hesitation. Siyun, in that moment, knows exactly what he's up against. He feels fear, genuine fear. The figure in front of him is massive, built like a wall, body thick with muscle and aggression. His clenched fists are the size of bricks, and his face is twisted with frustration and bruised ego. Siyun understands he is no match in terms of size or strength, but if fear lingers in his mind, it never touches his face. Instead of shrinking, Siyun calculates. There is no room for panic. Only one question echoes in his head. How do I bring him down, no matter what it takes? The first thug charges, swinging out of sheer frustration, believing that brute strength alone would end things. But just before the punch lands, Siyun drops low, ducking beneath the blow, and grabs the man's waistband. In one swift movement, he yanks down the thug's pants, catching him completely off. Embarrassment overtakes him, and in that exact moment of confusion, Siyun strikes, launching a brutal kick, directly and decisively. With all the force his body can muster, the man stumbles backward, collapsed in both pain and humiliation. Another thug, seeing his friend fall, rushes forward to help. But Siyun is already one step ahead. With no hesitation, he scoops up a handful of dirt from the ground and flings it directly into the oncoming attacker's eyes. The sand blinds him instantly, leaving him flailing and disoriented. And now, only Homan remains. The boy who once strutted through school halls with confidence now stands frozen. For the second time, Siyun is standing before him, and the balance of power has shifted again. But Siyun does not speak with his fists this time. He issues a cold, quiet warning. A promise. If Yeoman dares to cross him again, he will gouge out his eyes. And to drive the point home, Siyun reaches down and pulls Yeoman's own belt from his waist. Wrapping it tightly around his hand, he lifts it high and brings it down. With a sharp crack across Homan's back, the sound echoes raw, vicious, absolute. Nearby, another figure watches. Gool Jin, one of the most feared delinquent leaders in school, witnesses the entire scene. He says nothing, but he has seen enough. The rumor that began as whispers now becomes wildfire. What was once a murmur becomes a roar. By the next day, stories flood the school corridors. Some students claim Siyun fights dirty using tricks and low tactics. Others inflate his legend, saying he could take on 3 guys blindfolded. No one can agree on the truth, but one thing is certain. Siyun Yan is no longer seen as weak. When morning arrives, Siyun returns to school like any other day, quietly, without fanfare. He walks to his desk and takes his seat, his face unreadable. But peace does not last. Once again, another school delinquent approaches. Larger, older, and louder. The boy confronts Siyun with the air of superiority, as if the violence from yesterday meant nothing. He demands an apology, offers forgiveness in return, but Siyun remains cold and still. Without raising his voice, he refuses. He says he will not apologize. He doesn't even know who this person is. The classroom watches in uneasy silence. But before anything escalates further, a new figure enters, Human Park. He is known by one title, the Psycho, a name earned not by rumors, but by acts of sheer intimidation. When Human speaks, people listen. He had visited the classroom once before, curious about the boy who had flipped the hierarchy. Now he returns not as a bystander, but as a wall between Siyun and the incoming threats, with a calm but dangerous presence. Human steps between them and delivers a warning. He tells the delinquent to back down, to stop stirring trouble here, and most shockingly, he demands an apology not from Siyun but to him, because this classroom is no longer a place for their games. The threat is clear. The message is received. The group backs off. They leave. Siyun remains seated, unmoved. And now, even the delinquents fear the weight of his growing reputation, but not all are ready to accept this new balance. The boy who was warned by Human, Pilyong Kim, walks away with trembling hands. The encounter has shaken him. Fear lingers not because of Siyun, but because of Human Park. Pilyong knows that if he steps out of line again, he might face something far worse than humiliation. In desperation, he makes a call. On the other end of the line is Si-hoon Bae, one of the senior figures of the school's delinquent world. Unlike others, Si-hoon doesn't rely on numbers. He is cold, violent, and dangerous. More importantly, he holds a personal grudge against Human Park. Pilyong's voice trembles through the phone. He pleads for help. He tells Si-hoon that Human has crossed the line, that he needs to be stopped. But Si-hoon, at that moment, is in the middle of tormenting another student. He hears Pilyong's words, and his expression darkens. His anger simmers. The name Human Park is like fuel to a fire already burning inside him. He doesn't respond with fear, only fury. If Human Park truly wants a fight, then he'll get one. Si-hoon Bae seethes with quiet fury. The name Human Park echoes in his head like a slap. Not long ago, a rumor had spread, a story told in hushed tones around the school, a story that Human had defeated him. A lie, as far as Si-hoon is concerned. An insult to his reputation. To him, strength is everything, and to have that strength questioned by someone like Human is unacceptable. Now, with tension building again, Si-hoon decides it's time to end the rumor for good. He turns to his subordinate's, eyes narrowed, voice low and venomous. He gives a simple command: bring Human Park here, drag him in if they must. He wants to show everyone, especially Human, who the real winner is, who the true top dog of the school has always been. But his lackeys hesitate. Even among delinquents, even among fighters and bullies, Human Park is a name that carries weight. He is not just strong, he is unpredictable, ruthless, and willing to go further than most. They know that trying to drag him anywhere might backfire horribly. Still, they nod reluctantly, caught between their fear of Human and their loyalty to SIHO. Meanwhile, far from the politics of school delinquents and silent turf wars, Si-yoon remains focused on his studies. In class, he appears as a model student, silent, calm, and seemingly dedicated. He shares a desk with a classmate who occasionally tries to engage in conversation. Si-yoon nods and replies with short responses. Yes, right. But his eyes remain fixed on his notes. His mind isn't in the conversation. It's never is. Behind them, students begin to murmur. How could someone like Si-yoon, who barely speaks, who looks so physically weak, defeat someone like Human Choi? They had seen the aftermath, heard the stories, but it still didn't make sense. Doubts creep in, slowly replacing fear with confusion. C-eun, unaware or uncaring, excuses himself to the restroom. Inside the bathroom, as the mirror reflects his tired expression, his thoughts drift into a memory, a sudden flashback. The name Suho echoes in his mind, a figure from his past, someone who meant something, someone important. The memory is brief but heavy, like a weight pressing against his chest. He doesn't linger on it, but it changes his expression ever so slightly before he returns to class. But the moment he steps back inside, he notices something. His seatmate's neck is red, marked, swollen just slightly at the collarbone. It takes Si-yoon only a second to understand. It happened when he was gone. Someone had taken advantage of his absence. Someone had laid hands on the one person who sat next to him, not out of friendship, but out of proximity. A message, perhaps, or just cruelty. Either way, Si-yoon sees it, and he doesn't forget. Outside, the classroom Human Park is seen joking casually with a group of students. He acts carefree, detached from the drama unfolding inside. But even as he laughs, eyes watch him from a distance. Pilyong Kim is lurking. He studies Human like a predator, studies prey, but not out of confidence. It's strategy. Pilyong knows he cannot fight Human directly. Instead, he waits, observes, hoping for a moment of weakness, something to exploit, maybe a setup, maybe a trap. But by the time his plan begins to take shape, Human is no longer at school. He has cut class, vanished, perhaps intentionally. And with him gone, the dynamic shifts again. Back inside, Si-yoon becomes the focus of attention. Eyes follow him wherever he goes. Students who never noticed him before now glance with disbelief. They whisper to one another, questioning what they've heard. Could this boy, this thin, quiet, expressionless student, truly be the one who humiliated Human? And then, the humiliation begins. During class, someone approaches Si-yoon's desk. At first it seems innocent. The student coughs and mutters something about their throat feeling dry. Then, without warning, they spit. Not at Si-yoon's face, not on the ground beside him, but directly on his pants. The excuse is thin. My throat? I needed to spit, ... But the intent is crystal clear. It's a calculated insult meant to degrade him, to provoke him, to test his limits. Si-yoon stares down at the wet spot on his clothes. His hands tighten slightly, his jaw locks. Anger brews deep inside, raw, and rising, but he says nothing. Not because he is afraid, but because the teacher has just walked into the room. The lesson begins, and with it, Siyun must swallow that rage. For now, but even silence has its limits. The plan was already in motion. Underneath the weathered concrete of an old bridge, a place students often whispered about, a group of Sihun Bei's subordinates gathered. It was Piliang Kim who had issued the order. Wait here, Human Park. They knew, often passed through this area after school. It was quiet, out of the way, and perfect for a trap. They didn't need to search for him, they just had to wait. Back inside the classroom. Tension was still building. Sion Yan sat in silence, as usual, but his deskmate was anything but calm. There was something unsettling in Yan's posture, something simmering. His expression was still, but his energy was sharp, almost dangerous. He didn't speak, he barely moved, but anyone paying close attention would have sensed it. A weight pressing down on the air, his classmates seated just inches away, felt it most. The quiet rage, the barely restrained fury radiating from the boy beside him, made even breathing feel difficult. It was the presence of someone who looked like they wanted to kill. And yet, outside the walls of the school, Human Park was far from troubled. He had skipped class and was now lounging in a pool hall with one of his close friends. The scent of smoke and chalk dust filled the air. They laughed together, carefree, unworried. The girl working the counter, a beautiful young woman, caught both of their attention, and the mood stayed light. They ordered a table, placed a drink, ordered coffee, and banter, unaware of the trap being set for them beneath the bridge. Back at the bridge, the ambush squad had assembled as instructed, 5 in total, all under Sihun's command. They checked the time. 4 o'clock sharp. The sun hung low in the sky, casting stretched shadows beneath the overpass. All they needed now was their target. But instead of Human Park, another figure appeared. C-Eun Yan, after a long day of silently swallowing his anger, had packed up his things and left the school like any ordinary student. His face was blank, but his emotions had not cooled. There was no laughter in his walk, no lightness in his step. And as fate would have it, his path took him toward the underpass, the very one haunted by rumors. He didn't know what was waiting. At first glance, he saw them. 5 silhouettes loitering in the dim light beneath the bridge. His instincts screamed. He immediately considered turning around. 5 on 1, no matter how clever, no matter how strategic, was suicide. He had no interest in fighting, no reason to pick a battle he couldn't win. But then one of them called out. They weren't just strangers, they were Sehun's people. Delinquents sent not just to ambush someone, but now, apparently mistaking him for the target. Before Yan could step away, one of them moved forward and grabbed him by the collar. The force was rough, the intent, aggressive. Hands then moved to his head, a display of domination, and something inside Yan snapped. A cold, blistering fury took hold of his mind. If I'm going to get beaten anyway, he thought, at least I'll make sure 1 or 2 of them remember it. His movements were sudden, sharp, and violent. He reached into his pocket, a pen. In one clean, savage motion, he plunged it into the arm of the man holding him. The thug screamed, stumbling back. Before the others could react, Yan grabbed a nearby brick, a piece of broken concrete lying in the dust, and hurled it directly into another's skull. The force of impact cracked the silence like thunder. Chaos erupted. The remaining 4 rushed forward, fury blazing. Yan stood still, his breath heavy, his heart racing. He didn't care anymore. He was ready to be beaten, to be stomped. But he wasn't going down quietly. And then, suddenly, help came from the shadows. Gai Jin, the very delinquent leader who had silently watched Yan from afar before, now stepped in without warning. His foot crashed into one of the attackers. From behind, sending him flying forward, the fight was no longer one-sided. And then Human Park arrived the moment he saw the scene unfolding, saw who was fighting, and who they were fighting against. Everything clicked. He knew these people. They weren't here for Yan. They were here for him, with a sharp grin and fire in his eyes. Human approached the group. His voice didn't tremble. His steps didn't falter, and when he spoke, it wasn't with anger, it was with excitement. I'm the one you're looking for, he said. Let's fight right here, right now. The grin on his face was almost joyful. This wasn't fear. This wasn't panic. This was Human Park, ready for war. The sides were drawn, 5 against 4. The battle was about to begin. For Siyun Yan, this was unfamiliar territory. All his life, he had fought alone. Every bruise, every scar, every victory or loss, they were his alone to carry. The idea of someone standing beside him in a fight was foreign, uncomfortable. Even under the cold shadow of a bridge, for the first time, others were fighting with him. The air was charged. Tension crackled between Human Park and the group sent to ambush him. Human stepped forward, his voice sharp as he mocked the cowardice of Si-hoon, not daring to face him himself, but instead sending underlings to drag him out. He called Si-hoon out directly, his words meant to provoke, to ridicule. But before the confrontation could unfold the way Human had imagined, a verbal exchange, layered with sarcasm, his friend Go Huntak, standing beside him, lost patience. Without waiting, Huntak lunged out his fist, connected hard with one of the attackers. The fight exploded into chaos. Hum in blinked. Annoyed. Idiot, he thought. This wasn't how he wanted to start. He just wanted to mock them a little, toy with their pride. But now fists were flying and blood was already in the air. He had no choice but to jump in. The fight turned violent quickly. Human landed multiple blows, fast and efficient, but in the middle of it, he took a hard punch to the jaw. Blood trickled from his mouth, and for a second, he staggered, a flash of red blooming across his lips. Meanwhile, Gail Jin had taken on 2 opponents by himself. His moves were precise, and he didn't hesitate. He fought like someone used to being outnumbered. Fierce, steady, relentless. The others split off. One-on-one battles began to erupt around them. Si-hoon now stood face to face with the thug who had first pulled his collar, the same one he had stabbed with a pen and struck with a brick. Rage burned in the thug's eyes. His voice cracked with fury as he screamed that he'd kill this kid. But Yan didn't flinch. He didn't even think. In an instant, he seized the man's pinky finger and bent it back until the bones snapped. The crack echoed like a gunshot. The man screamed. But Yan wasn't done. He grabbed him by the hair, dragging his head downward and slamming it violently into the concrete wall beside them. Everything stopped. For a moment, time froze. Everyone looked over. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't defense. What they saw in Yan wasn't desperation or survival. It was execution. There were no fists, no strategy, just raw intent to destroy. The kind of violence that made others question whether the person in front of them was fighting to win or to end someone. Yan stood over his opponent, breathing heavily, blood on his hands, his voice cold and steady. "Stop," he said. "I'm tired of this." His words weren't shouted. They weren't emotional. Just a simple statement of exhaustion, of disgust, toward the endless cycle of fights and vengeance. The others obeyed, whether out of fear or respect. No one moved again. The dust began to settle. Later that day, as the adrenaline faded, the group offered Yan something symbolic. An invitation, not formal, but genuine. A chance to eat together, to be part of something, a kind of fellowship. Yeon refused. His voice carried no warmth. "I'm not that free," he said coldly. "You all eat. I have other things to do." And with that, he walked away. No smiles, no thanks, no brotherhood. Just Si-hoon, Yan, as he had always been, alone. Later that evening, Yan arrived late to an after-school study class. The classroom was already half full. Eyes turned toward him. One girl, seated quietly, looked up, and her gaze lingered. She smiled, almost involuntarily. To her, this boy didn't look like someone who fought in alleyways or cracked skulls. His face was delicate, his features soft. He looks like an idol, she thought, like a beautiful boy you'd see on a magazine cover. Of course. She had no idea who he really was. Across the room, seated in the same cram school class, a few delinquents from earlier were whispering among themselves. They hadn't recognized Yan at first, but once they did, the whispering turned to open talk. They laughed and retold parts of the fight like it was a war story. Their voices grew louder. They mentioned the blood, the screams. Other students grew uncomfortable. The air around them felt sharp, dangerous. The room was supposed to be quiet, peaceful, but in that corner, the noise of the streets still lingered. Elsewhere, far from classrooms and bridge fights, Si-hoon Bae sat surrounded by his own. The report had come in. The operation, the ambush, had failed. Worse, Hyun Park had humiliated them again. His men were bruised, broken, and defeated. Si-hoon exploded in rage, slamming blame on everyone but himself. But this time, his subordinates pushed back. They had been loyal. They had followed orders, but they weren't fools. They began to murmur to suggest that maybe the problem wasn't them, that maybe Si-hoon wasn't as untouchable as he thought. And now, one of them muttered a name under their breath, Baekjin Na, a higher-up, a real power. Someone above Si-hoon in the pecking order. They were going to report this, and for the first time Si-hoon Bae's authority no longer felt absolute.